The great chamber of the Galactic Tribunal was cold and wide, with walls made of silver stone and glowing lines that pulsed like veins under the skin of the room. Hundreds of alien eyes stared forward without blinking. In the middle, under the sharp white light, stood a single human in chains. His name was Rael Carter, a technician from Earth who never asked for war. Yet here he was, accused of starting one with the most feared empire in this part of the galaxy, the Council of Judges 6. Tall beings with no mouths, no eyes, only pulsing light inside their hoods read out his charges with voices that echoed inside the skull. The translator drone floated near his ear, repeating every word in cold, perfect English: treason, unauthorized technology use, violation of peace accords, crimes punishable by death or worse. Rael's heart pounded. Not because he feared death, but because he didn't understand why this was happening. He had only followed orders. He repaired a relay station on a border moon. That's all. But somehow ships exploded, empires clashed, and now he stood here as the cause. He looked around, trying to find one familiar face. None. The gallery was filled with warlords, ambassadors, and soldiers of all shapes. Reptilian heads, insect wings, glowing veins. A few laughed softly at the sight of a fragile human on trial. Then the lead judge leaned forward. "How do you plead, Terran?" came the strange, layered voice through the drone. Rael opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the ceiling above him exploded in a rain of metal and light. Screams filled the chamber. Some ducked, others ran. But she dropped through the opening like a meteor. A figure cloaked in gold and fire, landing beside him in a crouch that cracked the floor. Smoke cleared. Rael's eyes widened. She wasn't human. Tall, muscles like carved stone, skin like glowing violet marble. Her silver-white hair flowed like it moved underwater. Her eyes burning golden locked on his face. Then she spoke. Not to the judges, not to the guards, just to him. "I have claimed you, Rael of Earth. You are mine. Made of the house of Chiron. No one touches what is mine." Gasps echoed like thunder. The guards froze. The tribunal screamed for control. Chaos broke loose again, but the alien woman stood still, her hand reaching out, pulling him gently to her side. He didn't understand. He hadn't seen her before. Not once, but she knew him, knew his name. And now she stood between him and death like a shield made of fury and steel. Rael barely managed a whisper. "Why me?" Her eyes softened for a second. "Because they used you as bait, and because I made a promise to your mother, to your world, and to myself." Lasers were pointed at her. The tribunal guards shouted warnings. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she placed her hand on his chest. "Your heartbeat is fast, but not broken. You're still strong. Good. I need you alive." One of the insect-like guards rushed forward with a stun spear. In one smooth move, she turned and smashed him back with a wave of energy that knocked others down. The air trembled with the force of it. Rael stumbled. She caught him, lifted him with one arm like he weighed nothing. Her armor hissed and shifted, wrapping around him like living metal. A shield formed in front of them as blasts came from all directions. Behind the cover, he gasped. "You planned this?" "Not like this," she replied. "But I swore if they ever put you on trial, I would come. No matter the cost." Rael didn't know what to say. He could feel her strength. He could smell the strange scent of stars and cold fire from her skin. She wasn't just any alien. She was royalty. A warrior. Maybe even a legend. The tribunal screamed louder, demanding backup. Ships were incoming. Fighters from above. They were sealing the dome. She looked up and smiled. "I only need 3 minutes." "Hold your breath, mate." He didn't even have time to protest. She slammed something into the floor. The ground below them exploded again. sending both of them down into the emergency tunnels beneath the tribunal chamber. They landed in darkness, her hand never letting go of his. Rael coughed, still trying to understand what just happened. "You knew my mother?" he asked. "She saved my life," the warrior replied softly. "Now I repay the debt by saving hers. Through you, they ran through narrow corridors filled with emergency lights and alarms. Every few seconds, she glanced at him like she was checking if he was still breathing. Rael had so many questions, but nothing made sense. Was this a rescue or a kidnapping? Why call him a mate? Why now? Why her? Before he could ask, they reached a locked gate. She pressed her palm to the control, and it opened like it recognized her blood. Outside was a tunnel that led to the mountains, freedom, but still no answers. Rael stopped. She turned to face him. "What now?" he asked. She looked at him with something between sadness and hope. "Now I take you home. To my world, where you'll be safe. And where you'll learn why fate chose you long before this war began." Rael's legs trembled. His hands were shaking, but he nodded. Because deep down, something inside him whispered that everything was about to change. Asterisk. The escape tunnel twisted beneath the mountain like a serpent, lit only by dim red lights that flickered with power failure warnings. Rael's lungs burned, but he kept running beside her, stumbling through debris and broken floor plates. She moved too fast for someone so tall and armored. Every motion was sharp and controlled, like she had done this 1,000 times before. Her name still hadn't been spoken, but Rael sensed the weight behind her presence. "Where are we going?" Rael asked as they turned a corner, barely dodging. "Falling pipes. To the surface," she replied without looking back. "Then extraction. My ship is cloaked near the ridge. But we only have minutes before pursuit." His breath came harder now. "They'll follow us. The tribunal won't let this go. You just attacked the highest court in the quadrant." She stopped and turned to face him. Even in the red light, her eyes burned like suns. "Let them come. They made you their scapegoat. Now they'll answer for it." Before Rael could respond, the ground shook beneath them. The lights blinked and alarms howled louder. The tribunal had activated seismic disruptors to collapse the escape route. She cursed it in a language Rael didn't know, then grabbed his hand and pulled him into a side shaft. They ducked into the shadows just as the ceiling behind them caved. In falling rocks slammed into the tunnel. Wind rushed past them. A wall of dust swallowed the path they'd just run through. Rael stared, heart pounding, realizing how close they were to being buried alive. She turned toward a ladder built into the side wall. "Up, now. That collapse will delay them, but not for long. Once we reach the surface, I'll signal the Viracar." Rael hesitated. "That's your ship?" "No," she said with a cold smile. "That's my war beast." The climb was brutal. The ladder stretched up through a maintenance shaft that stank of metal, heat, and alien waste. Rael's arms ached. His fingers slipped. But every time he looked down, she was there, one hand behind him, ready to catch him if he fell. At last, they reached the top. She pushed open a vent cover and helped him through. Fresh air hit his face like a slap. Cold, sharp, real. The planet's twin moons hung low over the mountains, casting silver light across the broken cliffs. They crouched on the edge of a high ridge. Below them, lights flickered across the valley. As tribunal forces moved in, gunships hovered. Sensors scanned. Rael's stomach twisted at the scale of what they were up against. "We're trapped," he whispered. "We're not," she said, touching a device on her wrist. "They are." From behind the ridge, the mountain groaned. Then the ground split open, and something massive rose from the earth. A beast made of metal and muscle, four-legged, glowing red veins, a head shaped like a hammer. Its roar shook the valley. Rael fell backward. "That's your ship?" "That's Viracar, a living war engine, my guardian. And now yours." The beast lowered its body like a ramp, She helped Rail climb onto its back. Metal clamps wrapped around his legs, holding him in place. The creature's skin felt alive, warm and buzzing with energy. As they mounted up, the wind changed. Tribunal flyers spotted them. She raised her arm. A shield dome spread over them just as the first barrage hit. Missiles exploded. Plasma fire splashed off the barrier. Rail screamed, but she never blinked. Virakar responded. Twin cannons unfolded from its back and fired into the air. One flyer exploded instantly. The others scattered. The beast started to run, moving like thunder through the canyon below. Rail gripped the harness tight. The ride was violent. But he couldn't stop watching her. The way she moved. The way she never looked afraid. She was built for war, and yet she kept glancing back to make sure he was still holding on. Why me? He shouted again over the storm. She looked at him, wind ripping through her silver hair. You're not just a technician, Rail. You're the key to something they've been hiding for years. Something ancient. Something dangerous. What did I do? You were born. That was enough. You don't see it yet. But your bloodline carries power they fear. Power they tried to erase. Rail stared at her, not knowing whether to believe her or scream. But deep down, something stirred in him, a memory. A name he never understood. Stories his mother whispered before bed. About stars that fell. About warriors who vanished. About a child who would awaken old wrath. Virakar leapt over a broken bridge and slid down a slope. More explosions lit up the valley. Tribunal soldiers were setting up a blockade. She raised a blade from her hip, glowing with alien symbols. "Brace yourself," she said. "This part gets bloody." The beast charged forward. It tore through the lines like a comet. Her blade danced in the moonlight, slicing weapons and armor alike. Rail screamed but didn't let go. He felt heat rising through his skin. Not fear, something else. Something ancient waking up inside him. They broke through the last wall. The stars opened above them. Virakar roared again and took off across the plains, vanishing into darkness with the speed of lightning. When silence finally returned, and they were far beyond the tribunal's reach, Rail looked at her. She was bleeding from one shoulder. Burn marks across her armor. And yet, she smiled like none of it mattered. "You're safe now," she whispered. Rail didn't know what to say. So he just nodded. The wind howled across the open plains as Virakar slowed its pace, smoke rising from its metal flanks. The stars above were clear now, shining across the barren land where no cities stood. Only stone and shadow. Rail's body ached from the ride. His arms were sore, his mind even worse. He still didn't understand what he had just survived. Not a trial, not a war. Something else entirely. Something older, like a prophecy pulled from the dust of forgotten planets. The alien warrior climbed down first, checking Virakar's systems and placing a hand gently on its side. The beast growled softly like a satisfied machine animal resting after a great battle. Rail slid off next. His legs trembled under his own weight, and the cold night air made him shiver. She caught him by the arm and held him steady. "You held on longer than most soldiers," she said, her voice calm but proud. "That shows something." "Shows what?" he asked, teeth chattering. "That I'm a decent hostage?" She smirked. "No, it shows that your blood remembers. Even if your mind doesn't." She led him to a hidden shelter built into the rocks. It opened with a soft hum. Inside was warmth, clean air, and enough supplies to survive days of hiding. Rail looked around, stunned by how prepared she was. Moment the doors sealed behind them, his knees gave out. He dropped onto a seat, breathing hard. "You're going to have to explain everything. No more riddles, no more mysterious rescues. I want to know who you are, what I am, why I was really on trial." She removed her armor piece by piece. Beneath it, Her body was covered in scars, glowing slightly under her skin like old fire still burning deep. Her movements slowed. Her face no longer carried the rage of battle. Instead, she looked tired. "My name is Calvera," she said, "Commander of the Chiron Blades, Shield of the Outer Stars, and now your mate by right of Blood Pact, Rael." Blinked. "Blood Pact?" She sat across from him. Her eyes never left his. "Your mother saved me 21 cycles ago. She was a soldier in the Terran Drossa's conflict. Her ship crashed during a storm. She could have left me to die. Instead, she used her own blood to close my wounds. In our culture, that's not just kindness. It's a bond. But I never met you. I didn't know about any of this. Why me?" Rael asked. "Because she made me promise," Calvera replied. "If anything happened to her, I'd protect her son, and I did, quietly, from the shadows. Until today, when they used your work as a cover for their lies. They wanted you dead because of what you carry." Rael felt like the air had been knocked out of him. "What do I carry?" She leaned forward. "Legacy. Your bloodline was altered generations ago. Not by accident. You are part of a human project that no longer exists. They created warriors who could bond with ancient tech, who could awaken sleeping power. But the program was erased when peace treaties banned weaponized humans. So I'm some kind of weapon?" "No," she said gently. "You're a key. And now that key has been exposed. That's why they panicked. That's why they put you on trial. They feared what you might unlock." Rael stood up and began pacing. "This is insane. I was a technician. I fixed broken signal towers. That's all I've done for the last 5 years. And yet," Calvera said, standing with him, "every time you touched a damaged system, it rebooted faster than standard protocols. You thought it was luck, but it was something more. Something buried inside your code." Rael froze. "Code?" She nodded. "Nanits, tiny machines in your blood. Very old, very illegal, but very real. They're dormant now. But if activated, they can connect you to machines built before the last Star War. Machines like Virakar." His mind spun. His body shook. He backed into a wall and slid down it slowly. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any of this. I was happy living a quiet life on a mining moon." Calvera sat beside him, her expression softer than before. "I know, and I would have let you live that life. But they forced my hand. They made their move. Now we make ours." Rael looked up at her. "So what now?" "Now," she said, reaching for a small orb from her belt, "we wake up the others." The orb floated into the air and projected a map of the surrounding galaxy. 3 glowing points pulsed in red. "3 more like you," she said. 3 who share the same bloodline. If we reach them before the tribunal does, we may have a chance to stop what's coming." Rael stared at the lights, then at her. "What's coming?" Calvera's jaw tightened. "Something old. Something that sleeps under the black sun. They plan to awaken it, and they need a key to do it. That key is you." Rael closed his eyes for a moment. He felt like screaming, but he didn't. Instead, he opened them again and stood up slowly. "Then we better move fast." Asterisk. Rael stood in front of the holomap, eyes fixed on the red pulsing dots that marked the location of the other hidden humans. The weight of it pressed hard on his chest. He wasn't just running anymore. He was part of something ancient. Something dangerous. Calvera was already preparing for departure. Her movements were precise, focused, her armor resealed around her frame as if it had never been damaged. She tapped commands into her gauntlet and spoke to Virakar through a soft hum. In her native language, Rael watched her from the corner of the room. He still didn't know what to call what they were. Protector and rescued, stranger and stranger. She called him her mate, but he didn't even know what that meant in her culture. "I don't even know who I am anymore," Rael muttered as he sat back down on the cold metal bench. Calvera looked at him but said nothing. Instead, she walked over and handed him a small vial filled with glowing blue liquid. "Drink this. It will calm your nerves and keep your muscles from locking up. The ride ahead will not be smooth." He hesitated, then drank. The warmth spread through his body almost instantly. The pain eased. The confusion remained. They exited the shelter together and climbed back onto Virakar, who had finished regenerating its outer shell. The beast's eyes glowed brighter now, sensing the urgency in its master's voice. As they rode through the plains, Rail shouted over the wind, "Where are we going first?" Calvera replied, "To the ice rings of Valter. The first carrier sleeps there beneath frozen waters. His name is Delin Merrick. He's older than you, trained longer, but he does not yet know what he is." They rode in silence for hours, moving through lands that Rail had never seen before. The world felt massive now, full of unknown forces and sleeping warriors. He had spent years believing he was small and meaningless. That lie no longer held. When the first ice fields appeared on the horizon, Rail gasped. Towers of crystal blue rose from the ground like jagged fangs. Storm clouds circled above, spitting white lightning across the frozen plains. Calvera guided Virakar down a narrow path between the glaciers. Delin's stasis pod is hidden inside a dead mining facility. The tribunal will be here soon. They've already sent hunters. We have little time. They dismounted near a ruined outpost. Metal was twisted by ancient frost. Doors sealed in solid ice. Calvera placed her hand on the wall. Her armor lit up in thin golden lines and began melting the surface with controlled heat. Rail helped dig out the entrance. Beneath the thick ice, symbols like those on Virakar were carved into the walls. They pulsed faintly when Rail passed his hand over them. "You were designed to activate this place," Calvera said. "Your presence wakes the systems. Even the ones buried for centuries." The door groaned open. Inside, stale air pushed out in a heavy breath. They stepped into darkness lit only by her armor and Rail's pulse. They followed narrow corridors down until they reached the main vault. In the center stood a massive chamber where a stasis pod floated in glowing fluid. Inside was a man taller than Rail, with the same strange mark on his wrist. His eyes were closed, his body unmoving. Rail stepped forward, heart pounding. "So that's him?" Calvera nodded. "Yes, but the awakening process is dangerous. If we rush it, he could die. But if we wait too long, the hunters will arrive first." A deep tremor rolled through the ice. The floor cracked slightly beneath them. Rail turned sharply. "What was that?" Calvera raised her weapon. "Tribunal shock troopers. They're tunneling in. We need to choose. Wake him now and face the consequences, or leave him and come back later. But if we leave, he will die." Rail looked at the pod, then at her. "You said my blood can wake him?" "Yes," she answered. "But it could also overload the process. It's never been tested." Rail didn't hesitate. He walked up to the pod, placed his palm against the glass, and closed his eyes. His heart was steady now. Something inside him clicked into place. The symbols on the walls began to glow. The pod responded, lighting up with waves of gold and blue. The fluid inside bubbled as energy pulsed from Rail's touch into the resting body. Delin Merrick gasped. His eyes shot open. He coughed violently and fell forward into Rail's arms. Calvera rushed to support them both. "He's alive," Rail whispered. Delin looked around, confused. "Who are you? Why do I feel connected to you?" Rail smiled faintly. "Because we're part of the same thing. And we don't have time to explain. Get up. We have to move." Calvera handed Delin a recovery suit and turned as footsteps echoed down the hallway. "They're here. Ready yourselves." Virakar crashed through the wall seconds later, its claws crushing stone as it opened a path to escape. The three of them leapt onto its back, just as blasts filled the chamber behind them. The ice walls shattered. Fire streaked the skies. But they made it out, the wind once again in their faces as Virakar roared across the frozen field. Behind them, the tribunal's forces screamed in anger. But they were too slow. Riel looked at Dylan, who held the beast's harness like a man still in shock. "Don't worry," he said. "You'll get used to this." The night sky was a blur of stars and wind as Virakar sprinted across the highlands, its massive legs pounding the frozen soil like drums of war. Behind them, the shattered ice fields were lit with explosions, but the beast didn't stop. Calvera stood tall at the front, holding onto the control grips, her cloak snapping behind her like a banner of fire. Rael sat near the rear with Dylan, who was still adjusting to his new reality. He hadn't spoken since they escaped. Rael handed him a thermal pack. "Drink this. It helps with the chill and the memory shock. I know what you're feeling." "I felt it yesterday." Dylan accepted it with shaking hands. "I saw faces in the pod. Dreams I thought were just noise. But they're real, aren't they? The visions, the voices, the machines." "Yes," Riel said. "They live inside us, waiting to wake. And now they're finally awake." Calvera turned to them. "We don't have time for fear. The next target is deeper in the Veil Nebula. A city world called Sorath. That's where the third carrier is hidden." Riel asked. "Another one like us?" "Her name is Lissari," Calvera replied. "Half human, half Dorvax. The result of a forbiddance union. She was placed in cryostasis as a child to avoid tribunal detection. If she awakens fully, her power could rival entire fleets." Dylan's eyes widened. "Then why did they hide her?" Calvera's voice lowered. "Because she's the one they fear most. Her abilities are unstable. If she bonds with the wrong frequency, she could tear the core of a planet apart." Virakar reached the edge of a canyon. Without hesitation, it leapt over the chasm, landing on the far side with a quake that shook Rael's bones. The wind changed direction, warmer now, glowing purple as they neared the nebula's outer rim. Inside the storm, colors danced like living paint. The air shimmered with strange energy. Machines once buried inside Rael's blood began to hum quietly. He could feel Dylan react too, his hand twitching with invisible static. They arrived at Sorath's upper ring, a giant metal city floating in the haze like a forgotten monument. Calvera guided Virakar to a landing platform. As the beast powered down, Rael noticed the silence in the city. No lights, no movement, no security. "This place is dead," he said. Calvera shook her head. "No, it's asleep, like Lissari. Waiting to be called." They entered the core spire, passing halls filled with rusted statues and flickering consoles. Dylan touched one, and it lit up instantly. Rael followed him down a corridor where murals told the story of old wars battles fought with voices, not weapons. Powers unleashed with thought alone. At the end of the corridor, they found a door, sealed in blue metal. Calvera stepped back and gestured to Rael. "You must open it. Your blood carries the command key." Rael placed his hand on the panel. It scanned him. The door opened with a soft sigh. Inside was a chamber of light, and in its center, a glass cradle floated in midair. Inside was a girl no older than 16. Her hair floated around her head like silken water. Her eyes were closed. But the energy in the room told Rael she was far from weak. Dylan stepped beside him. "She doesn't look dangerous," Calvera whispered. "Don't be fooled. When she wakes, she may not recognize us. The cryostate can distort memory. We need to be ready for anything." Rael reached forward and touched the edge of the cradle. A spark leapt to his hand. The girl's eyes snapped open, glowing silver. For a second, nothing moved. Then the chamber shook violently. Lissari rose into the air, her arms stretched wide. Energy rippled off her like waves. Rael stepped forward. "It's okay, you're safe. I'm Rael. This is Dellen, we're like you. We're here to help. She blinked, then frowned. You're not tribunal. You're loud. You're burning. I feel you inside my skin. Rail swallowed hard. That's the bloodline. It connects us. We're here to stop the ones who made you sleep. The ones who would use you. She floated down slowly, her feet touching the ground. I remember fire, screams, then darkness, then nothing. Why now? Because they're coming, Dellen said. And we need you. All of us do. Lisari looked at him. I dreamed of a beast with no face. It wanted to swallow stars. Is that what you're running from? Calvera stepped forward. No, that's what we're hunting. The girl tilted her head. Then she smiled faintly. Good, because I'm tired of sleeping. The chamber calmed. The energy faded. Rail let out a breath. They had her. All three now awakened. The bloodline was complete. Suddenly, alarms screamed across the city. Soroth had detected their presence. Tribunal warships were inbound. The time for rest was over. Calvera raised her weapon and pointed toward the exit. Move, we fight together now. Soroth's sky turned blood red as the first tribunal warships emerged from the clouds. Massive in scale, bristling with weapons. They floated above the metal city like silent executioners waiting for the right command. Calvera stood atop the spire, her golden armor glowing brighter with every second. Below her, Rail, Dellen, and Lisari readied themselves. The time for hiding had passed. The tribunal knew their location. Now the war would begin. Rail looked at the others. His hands were steady, though his heart beat hard in his chest. Dellen stood beside him, armored in ancient tech that hummed softly. Lisari floated just above the ground. Silver eyes locked on the incoming ships. They'll open fire soon, Calvera said, scanning the sky. Once they confirm our position, they won't hesitate. We either strike first or die standing. Rail stepped forward. Then we strike first. You said the bloodline was the key. It's time to use it. She nodded. Follow my lead. You three were built for this, even if you don't remember it yet. Let your instincts guide you. Trust the pulse. Trust the bond. Rail closed his eyes. Deep inside, he felt the machines awaken. Tiny sparks lit his veins. Symbols formed under his skin, glowing faintly. He looked over to Dellen, who was already charging a gauntlet made of folded energy. Lisari lifted both arms, and the air around her shifted like a storm bending toward her. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence alone sent waves through the walls. Calvera raised her arm, and Virakar came thundering out of the shadows below. The beast had evolved, its armor reforged, its weapons pulsing with Rail's signature. It kneeled for them, ready to serve. The four mounted the creature in silence. Above them, the lead tribunal vessel began powering its main cannon. Light built into a core that aimed straight at the city's heart. Rail raised his hand and aimed at the sky. The cannon fired. In the instant before it hit, Lazari's energy wrapped around them in a dome of white flame. The blast struck but did not break through. Virakar leapt into the air, climbing the spire wall like a storm serpent. With a roar, it launched upward into open sky, landing hard on the tribunal's outer deck. Calvera jumped down first. Blades drawn, the enemy troops rushed forward, clad in thick black armor. Calvera tore through them like wind through paper. Dellen followed, punching shockwaves into the deck with his fists. Rail moved faster than he thought possible, dodging blasts and striking back with bursts of light from his palms. Lisari floated above them, her presence bending gravity itself. Enemies around her dropped their weapons or screamed as their minds filled with visions too large to bear. Within minutes, they had cleared the upper deck. Calvera turned to Rail. Now, you're the key. Insert your pulse into the core. Reprogram the ship before it recovers. Rail ran to the control station. The interface rejected him at first, but when he placed his hand over the core, the lights shifted. The ship recognized him, accepted him, obeyed. The tribunal tried to override the system. Too late. Rael's command had already taken hold. The ship turned, aimed at its own fleet, and fired. 2 tribunal vessels exploded. A third tried to retreat, but was caught in the blast wave. Panic spread among the enemy ships. Their formation broke. Their signals became noise. From the burning sky, a new force arrived. Allied ships. Chiron warcruisers, responding to Calvera's emergency beacon. They joined the battle, cutting down what remained of the enemy with brutal speed. Rael staggered. Back from the console. It's done. They're running. Calvera smiled. Not running, losing. The tribunal's grip is breaking. Because of you. Delin laughed, blood on his face but eyes burning with fire. You really were the key, Rael. They were right to fear you. Lysari hovered down beside them. This isn't the end. The darkness I saw in my dreams still stirs. The tribunal was only a wall. Something older waits behind it. Rael turned to Calvera. What does she mean? Calvera looked out at the wreckage. The tribunal was protecting something buried. Something even they couldn't control. They feared you waking it. Now it's too late to stop what comes next. Rael stood tall. Then we face it. Together. No more running. No more sleeping. Whatever's next, we fight it. Calvera placed her hand over his chest. Spoken like a warrior of Chiron. Spoken like my mate. The wreckage of the tribunal fleet floated across Soreth's sky like broken wings, glowing dim in the fading light. Smoke curled upward from twisted metal, and fires burned quietly in the distance. For the first time in many years, the stars were silent. Rael stood on the command deck of the captured warship, his hands gripping the rail. Below him, cleanup teams from the Charon fleet searched the ruins, recovering what they could and scanning for signs of the enemy's return. Calvera stepped beside him, her armor scorched but her posture firm. You did what no council ever could. You ended their grip on this quadrant. The bloodline has risen again. Rael turned to her. And now we find what they were hiding. That dark thing Lysari saw. The tribunal didn't want control. They were guarding a prison. Delin and Lysari joined them. Both were still adjusting to their powers. Both had changed in only days. They were no longer hidden outcasts. They were warriors, chosen not by fate but by survival. Lysari raised her hand, and the map flickered to life above them. In the far corner of the galaxy, beyond any star chart, a black zone pulsed like a wound. That's where the signal came from. Something woke up when Rael accessed the tribunal's core. Calvera frowned. The Black Sun. I thought it was a myth. A place where ancient machines sleep and stars die. But if it's real, then the tribunal wasn't our enemy. It was the gatekeeper. Rael's voice was steady. Then we stepped through the gate. We stop whatever they were afraid of. We don't let it consume everything. Preparations began at once. The warship, now renamed the Legacy Flame, was refitted in orbit. The Chiron engineers enhanced it with their strongest technology, while Delin and Rael fused it with their own awakened systems. Lysari stood at the heart of the engine, channeling energy in ways no one had seen before. With each pulse, the ship's walls grew stronger, its systems faster. It was no longer a weapon. It was alive. Calvera gave the final order, and the Legacy Flame launched into the void, flying through tunnels of blue light, toward the edge of known space. As they passed into uncharted territory, the galaxy fell behind like a forgotten dream. Inside the black zone, light itself was strange. Stars flickered and vanished. Time stretched and bent. But Rael's mind stayed clear. The closer they got, the more his blood whispered. Not in fear but in warning. At the center of the darkness stood a massive sphere, black as night, pulsing like a heart. Machines orbited it like broken teeth, Ancient, damaged, yet still alive. This was the thing buried in myths. The old core, Rael. Calvera, Dellen, and Lysari entered the core chamber together. Inside, the floor was glass, and the sky above was filled with spinning lights. At the center was a throne made of ash and wires. Something sat on it. It rose slowly as they approached. A being made of metal and shadows, wearing a crown of cables. Its voice cracked the air like a scream wrapped in silence. You were not meant to come here. You are the failures, the discarded. Why have you awakened me? Rael stepped forward. Because you are not the guardian of peace. You are the silence that kills growth. We are not your weapons. We are your end. The being opened its arms, and lightning tore through the chamber. Calvera leapt in front of Rael, deflecting the blast with her shield. Dellen charged forward, fists burning with golden fire. Lysari floated above, her eyes glowing with pure white light. The battle shook the chamber. Reality warped around them. Rael reached the core beneath the throne and placed his palm against it. The ancient machine screamed in rage. You will not shut me down. I am eternal. No, Rael said. You were just a machine waiting for a purpose. And we've chosen ours, life, not control. The core lit up and Rael's veins burned with power. The machine cracked apart, screaming into the dark. Dellen struck the final blow. Lysari sealed the throne with her light. Calvera stood over Rael, her hand on his shoulder. It was done. The chamber faded. The darkness lifted. Outside, stars returned to life. The black zone unraveled, becoming light again. The machine was gone. The bloodline had fulfilled its task, not by destruction, but by restoring what had been lost. Back aboard the Legacy Flame, the crew watched the stars from the bridge. Rael leaned against the window, breathing steady. So that's it? We're free now? Calvera smiled. No, we're responsible now. The galaxy needs leaders who won't hide truth, who will protect without fear. That's you, Dellen. Looked around. What happens to us now? Rael turned. We live. We rebuild. And we make sure no one else is buried in silence again. Calvera stepped close, her voice quiet. You were just a technician once. But now you carry the fire of worlds, and I carry your name in my vow, my mate, my shield, my future. Rael took her hand in his, and the stars burned brighter than ever.